In public. Hi everyone, welcome to the Stitchin Post and Knitting with me. I'm Nancy, work here, and Val is behind the camera today. And a couple of things I want to go over today. First I want to show you our new yarn that came in. We're going to feature Blue Sky Fibers wool stock. It is a beautiful wool yarn. It's 123 yards for $9.35. Can't beat the price point. Really good. Squishy, beautiful. Val is going to come in close. And I am going to also showcase a hat that Christy made, which is also up online. All of these are up online. I'm going to feature two hats. This is the Claremont cable hat, excuse me. It's a $3 pattern.
And you should try it on.
Don't we just love Val? I don't do hats. But, here we go.
Cute.
But it's a really cute hat, and I love the cable. And you could wear it off to the side, kind of like a cloche down. But it feels, this is one of my favorite yarns. You're going to see soon Ultra Alpaca, which is also my favorite. Obviously, I have a lot of favorite yarns. We also have, from Blue Sky Fibers, some kits that I want to talk about because they're really fun kits. The one is
Val
a
is
shawl
making
kit.
This one.
Yes, Val
She's
is.
got 3 inches done. And I was too embarrassed to bring it.
So we're going to shame her to bring it in.
This one we have a sample of, and I was going to take a picture of it on my daughter, and so it's at my house, so I apologize. It's not here either.
And then they also came out, which are called bundles. And we have 2 colorways that are 2 bundles. And if you go up on our website or see our newsletter, and if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, you want to, because we also featured some free patterns from Blue Sky Fibers. And one is a felted bowl, and it uses the grays and the creams. And we are going to go over that later towards the fall when I'm doing felted items. So you must stay tuned to me because we're going to do that come late September and October. We're going to do felted clogs, some felted bowls, and a lot of different things coming up for the holidays. But not yet, they're secrets. If you like doing hats, I'm going to put that you need to get the Chow-Goo needles. It does take a size US 6 and 7, 16 inch. Now you can either do the top in double points, which we have, or magic loop. At a later time I'll show magic loop. So that will be a technique in mid-August that I will go over to late August. So stay tuned for that. It's on the schedule. For it. I want to give one thing in hats. When I do hats, most of the patterns say start with a size smaller for the ribbing. I find that's tight on me, and I don't like my hats so tight. So I use the same size for the ribbing and the rest of the hat. And what does that do? It will still put in ribbing if you do a knit 1, purl 1, knit 2, purl 2, however type of ribbing you do. The nature of ribbing is to pull it in tighter. So even if you use the same size needle as the rest of the hat, it's still going to be a little bit snugger, good word, but it will still fit nicely. But for me, I've been told now I have a big head. A friend told me that yesterday in wearing a face shield, that my head was bigger. But anyway, maybe that's why I don't like the ribbing. So up until today, on different times here, you guys know I love this book, Cast On Bind Off. It's a staple here. It's a staple with me. Again, we do sell it up on our website or give me a call. I've done mostly cast-ons, and I haven't done very many bind-offs. So I'm going to show you a few bind-offs today. But before we get to that, and I have cast on, I want to, and I forgot my scissors, but one of the things that this hat, the multicolored hat, does is it changes color. And a lot of people have asked, how do I change color with it? And so I kind of want to show that today. So I have another color yarn. And changing color, when I show this to people, they go, oh, how silly of me not to know how to do this. So I am going to leave a tail. Now, I'm one that always leaves longer. I say 6 to 7, but my reality is I cut more like 8. And the reason why I cut more like 8, and I showed you once before, when I weave in, I come back about 3 inches and then back on itself about 1 inch. And so I like enough that I can pull it and open up. So here's my tail. I'm going to start a new color. What am I going to do? I'm going to leave another tail, roughly the same length, and notice how I'm just holding it behind, and I'm going to start knitting. Let's get the scissors and everything out of the way. Here's my other one tail. Here's my second tail, and I'm just going to knit. Oops. And knit. And you can just keep knitting with the new color. Now, there are times I'm lazy, and I don't want to have all these ends later to do. So if I am just knitting, it does not work if you are purling, and I'll explain why in a second. I will take that end and just the same color come over. Did everybody see that? I'm wrapping it over my working yarn, and I'm going to knit through. Yeah, my next stitch. Again, I'm going to come over my working yarn with that tail, knit through my next stitch. And you can go the whole way, a good 2.5 inches doing this. Make sure your gauge, you're not pulling this tight, and that you have not suddenly tightened these stitches up. But if you notice, you do not see that tail being weaved in through the back.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, how do you start a different color in the middle of a row? Or is that a big no-no? I mean, like if you were doing intarsia, wouldn't you be starting different colors?
Yes. So if my next thing was to do intarsia knitting, and I wanted to bring this color back in, let's say I'm halfway through, so it didn't make sense to carry it behind. Again, I'm going to leave my tail because I am going to have to wrap this, and I might do it on the stitch before. So I might take my new yarn here, one stitch before where I want to go, at least to start it, so that now my working yarn comes on top of that green I'm leaving behind and knit through. Because, and let me show you now, I don't want a hole here. I want to make sure these are linked in the back. A lot of times what happens when people do intarsia and they have bobbins and they have another color here that they're starting is they forget that little cross, and they suddenly have a hole, and they'll start knitting. So if I now come back, let's say now
Come back to the green.
I'm coming back to the green. If I want to start my green yarn here, and I just lift it up, watch what happens. Yeah. I have a hole.
Mm-hmm.
So they must cross
So would you
in
still
the
cross
back
it on the purl?
every time.
Would you do it the stitch before, like you did?
You don't have to. You
Okay.
just have to make sure that when you're coming, there's that cross, so that when I pull through, they're now linked, and there's not that hole there. Because when I come back to the next, if I'm coming back and doing this color, it's already linked here for the next row up. But I'm still going to cross it again coming up. And that actually should be a class more in Tarja. Unlike
gets you
Fair
excited.
Isle, yes. And unlike Fair Isle, where you're carrying colors around, so coming back to here, then I only have this one end to weave in. But now let's talk about changing colors in the round, because you're changing and essentially making a seam up the back. And it's a little different. So I'm going to knit with the green. If I can get things, I'm going to do it a little quicker. And come down. And I'm going to pretend that this switch I want to go one more just to. So I'm in the middle of the back of my hat, and I'm finished with my green row, and now I'm going to go to a cream row. When I switch, actually it's easier if I take it back so you can see the two colors. So when I switch now, and I start my new color, again, I've wrapped that yarn here, but I am going to take the stitch below, end my new stitch, and knit through it all. Yeah. And it's hard when I'm not in the round to do this. I'm making a mess. Hold on. And what that has done, it has made what's called a jogless join. So if I pull this down, can you see that now it's an even join? So if
Hold on, no, put that back down.
Well, I know, but let me do a few more so I can go to the very end or something. So by pulling this side up to here, it makes an even join. So if I'm doing the hat in the round, I've now made an even stripe. So it's a jogless join, what's called.
That's brilliant.
And you can YouTube that as well, I believe. Or just keep coming back and forth to mine. So I wanted to show then some bind offs, because we've talked about casting on and we've done some different cast ons, but we haven't really gone to binding off. And there's a couple of different bind offs.
A couple.
Well, there's a whole book, but there's a couple I'm going to show today. And the idea of binding off is we are taking stitches off the needle. And there's different ways to do it. If I want to add a picot edge to my bind off, which is little bumps, I first have to cast on anywhere from 2 to 3, depending on how big you want that picot. Normally it's about 2. And you are going to do I do a knitted cast on. There'll be some patterns that ask you for a cable cast on. The difference is cable goes through 2 stitches, knitted comes through the stitch. And just like I taught you how to knit on, you're going to add on 2 stitches or 3. So here's 2. I am going to add a 3rd stitch. So here's my 3 new stitches. So how do I do a picot? I'm going to knit 2, and knit 2 together. Whoops, before I do it, knit 2, bind off 1. I'm sorry, I'm being silly. Knit the 2 together. Bind off again. And then however many stitches you want in between, let's say it's 4. And I'm sorry. Yes. Can you tell, ladies and gentlemen, if there's men, I haven't had all my coffee yet.
She lost it.
I did. Well, you know what? I had to come in early today for a meeting, which meant I was an hour earlier. So I'm sorry. You're going to bind off however many in between your picots and then repeat. So if I lie this down, can you all see that cute little picot here? So again, how would I repeat? You're going to slip the yarn, but first you have to slip this back to the other side.
Oh, okay.
Cast on 2 stitches.
3.
Nope, 2 now, so I get back to my 3.
Oh, okay.
There's my 3. Bind off 2, bind off. Or 3. You know, it again depends on the size. Bind off. I have to knit 2 together to close the hole. Bind off, and now bind off the ones in between. Are there any questions on a picot bind off? And there's my little picot. Pull it up. Okay. Now, another bind off is you will, keeping 2 here, you will knit 2 together.
What's this one called?
You know, I'm not sure the name. I think it's more of it's a stretchy bind off. Slip it back. knit 2 together, slip it back,
I've never done that one.
knit 2 together. And you will keep doing that all the way across.
So would you use that for like socks? At the top of socks? Or do you actually?
Well, it depends if you're doing toe up or bottom down. And if I was doing toe up socks and I'm in ribbing, I would do, which I'll show you when we do socks, a ribbed bind off. So I'm in pattern. So that ends up being a really nice top. Now, the one thing about bind offs, regardless of what you do, either go up a size needle, or if you notice, I'm very loose. You do not want, so if I do just a regular bind off here, knit 1, pass 1 over, can you see how loose I am? And sometimes, let me put this so I can put it down, you want to have it give. And depending on what you are binding off will determine. So if you're doing a shawl and you're at the top of a shawl and you need it to open up nice and loose when you block it, you need that to be a very loose bind off. So if you tend to be a tight knitter, you're going to then get a double point needle, get a single point, doesn't matter, but 1 to 2 size bigger than what you're knitting on, and use that to bind off. Because if your tendency as you're binding is to pull tight, you're going to do it even if you think you're doing loose. So why take the chance? Just go up 2 sizes on your needle. The other thing I want to show you is when I am doing a lot of times in shawls, and you don't need to come up close, and it will say do a knitted bind off, which is just knit 1, knit 2, pass the first one up and over. Where it's going to be, depending on if it's the top of a shawl sometimes, the bottom of a shawl, if it's even socks, if that's the one I'm doing, I will always bind off in purl. And there's a reason why. When you bind off in knit, and actually Val, you do need to come over here. This is my knitted bind off, and you can see the top. It's tilting towards the right side of my work. Well, it's kind of hard. I do need to tilt it.
There we go.
This is tilting towards me. If I come and, well, this one's already bound off. So if the next stitch, if I do this in purl, and let me finish the row binding off in purl and lie it down so you can see the difference. And again, I'm still paying attention to being loose. Okay, so here's my knitted bind off. It's tipping towards me. But if you notice on my purl bind off, it's going to the back. Can you see the difference? This one's coming forward, and now that's the back. I like that look, personally, better. So the majority of my bind offs, unless I'm in pattern of a rib, knit 1, purl 1, I am going to bind off in purl. And that's a personal decision you can make. Again, there's lots of different bind offs that you can do, and we'll go over more in the coming weeks again, because I have done more cast-ons than bind offs. But I like a purl bind off. Are there any questions today? I guess
Everyone
not.
says hi,
Everybody's happy. Hello,
We
everyone.
get lots of thumbs ups, lots of hellos.
But I hope you'll go to our website and look at my favorite squishy yarn. And I don't know where there's a picture, I'll try to find a picture. I gave it to my son of for the quilt show, my first year here, which would have been 2018. I came just after the quilt show in 2017. I knitted a blanket, and I knitted it out of wool stock. And it looks like a quilt because they were little blocks, 5-inch blocks, knitting with wool stock. It was the first time I ever knit with this. I didn't carry it back east. I hadn't knit with it. I had heard about it, but I didn't. And I fell in love with it. The squishy feel of it, the bloom, it's beautiful. I gave the blanket to my son. I have to see if I can find my picture. I'll show it to you all next week, or we'll post it online. It was a free pattern called Pathways on Ravelry.
Or you borrow it from him.
Well, depending on what it looks like. He's a boy. An adult man, I should say, not a boy anymore. But I do love the yarn. And actually, it doesn't stretch out, even in the blanket. It just felt really good. I'm a lover of wool. Most people know that about me over superwashes. So I hope you'll go to our website and check these yarns out. We have more new yarn coming. We'll show you in the coming weeks. A lot from Barocco, one of our new favorite companies. We love Blue Sky Fibers, and a lot of other companies. You'll see Ba Yarn coming in the future as well, and new yarns coming all the time. So I'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great week. Stay safe, everybody. Wear your masks, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.